say thank you tonight, but let me thank you for letting me be here and show my appreciation. In preparing for this evening, I did put together an op-ed piece. Victor mentioned it. And I really said three things in this piece. The first one is it's September. And it's hard not to live through a September the last 12 or 13 years without recognizing 9/11. And when we think about the fire service in 9/11, the word valor, of course, comes to mind. But I took it a step further than that. And I suggested that 9/11, despite all the tragedy and the horrible events of that day, really reminded a nation that perhaps had sort of forgotten other words that are associated with the fire service. Dedication, skill, professionalism, sense of community. The things we've already heard about this morning, or rather in the program today, and we're going to hear more about as the evening goes on. The second point in this piece that I put together was the role that you all play in the moment, in the crisis. A crisis can be very lonely. It can be intensely personal. And to the victim, to the person that's in that crisis, often it's the first responder, it's the firefighter leaning over them that is the anchor to normal. It's that narrow straw. You become that narrow straw through which they see help and family and information and medical care. It gets very narrow, and you're the conduit. And then the third point that I made was really about the first two. The first one, dedication, professionalism, skill set. The second one, sense of personal connection. And it reminds us, that third point reminded us that as a community, we forget about the first 2 points at our peril. And so as maybe a bit of a bank shot to the public policymakers, I suggested that we as a community must focus on these points and make sure that we resource the fire service and the men and women that make it up properly so that you all can do what we now remember we loved about you all along. Now, I mentioned that this is sort of a personal and professional thank you. My family, as it turns out, got to see up close that personal crisis moment in the last couple of years. And so the thank you at the personal level was really heartfelt. But at the professional level, I'm going to put my chamber hat on and say thank you for the business community. A word about the Chamber. The Chamber of Commerce, like you, is a completely private organization, like the Local 1605, completely private. Don't get a dime of taxpayer money. We're a nonprofit. Our money comes really from membership and from events. Sounds very familiar. And so what we do, the way we think of ourselves, our members are businesses, but we really think of ourselves as a business, and the products and services that we provide help other businesses to be more successful. So that's sort of what we do. And we do that in a lot of different ways. Business people like to do business with people they know. We all like to do business with people we know. And so at the Chamber, we introduce you, as a small business person, we introduce you to a lot of people, some of whom might be new customers, some of whom might be new vendors or suppliers. So that's sort of the first way to do it. The second way we do it is, and again, as a business person in this environment, it is tough. You have to have your shoulder to the wheel all the time. And you can't be thinking about all the things swirling around that are going to affect your business. So there are a lot of them. The Chamber steps into that breach. The Chamber steps in and provides, whether it's through programming or newsletters or direct emails or whatever, we provide the information that business people need to conduct what they do on a daily basis. And then lastly, advocacy. Advocacy is really just a $5 word for we make them listen. You know, the easiest way for a politician to say yes is to say, the easiest way for a politician to say no is to say yes. Now go back and get everybody in your community on the same page and we'll sit down and work out the details. Well, that never happens because inevitably the petition, the request, the ask is made by one group. But we've solved that. At the Chamber, we've brought a number of stakeholders together and we make the ask for the community. We work closely with our delegation. We support their efforts. We go to Annapolis. We figure out what the community needs. We resource it properly, and we get stuff done. And we get stuff done the same way that you all get stuff done. It's through a love of community. It's through a commitment to the place that we live. Now let's talk a little bit about the place that we live. I'm with Victor. I walk around, and I love the buildings, and I too probably take them for granted, as we all do. And we are, let's not sugarcoat this, we are still at the tail end of the recession. Points east of here, maybe not so much, but we definitely are. But guess what? The recession is going to end. And when it does, the business community, and by extension all of us, are going to see the same trends that we saw before the recession. And that is what we view, what the business community and the chamber views, as Maryland's next generation of prosperity. And by that I mean, if you look at the big counties down, like along the I-95 corridor, what Maryland calls the Big Seven, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, they're economically mature. They're built out. If you will, the opportunity curve has flattened. So job creation and economic development isn't as readily available there as it is in places like Washington County and Frederick County, Carroll County, Charles County. There are a handful of us. And so if we cast ourselves as the next generation of prosperity in Maryland, when we eventually get out of this recession, and we will, we need to be prepared. We need to see our community in the best possible light. We need to be, if you will, at our post. The business community understands that. And I know that the fire service understands that. Our challenge, working together, is to make sure all the stakeholders, from policymakers all the way to the taxpayer, understands that too. So we can do our job, and you can do your job in making sure that we transition successfully into that next generation of prosperity for Maryland. So with that, I will turn you back over to the rest of the program. Thank you very much for including me. Congratulations to all medal winners tonight, and have a wonderful evening.
I love to talk that the recession is over and that we are on the upswing, so it's coming. I need to stop just for a second, and I'm sorry, I'm going to need to backtrack. And maybe I can get myself fired from these MC duties and then I never have to do it again. But I failed to recognize the dignitaries in the House. And obviously, we have our next speaker, who I'll introduce in a second, Mayor David Geisberts. And Don Munson, City Councilman Don Munson's in the House. City Councilwoman Penny Nye is in the House. Our current Fire Chief, Kid Dietrich, is in the House. Our retired Fire Chief, Chief Paul Baker, is proudly in the House. He's got the biggest smile of anyone in here, because he's retired. And I believe Bruce Zimmerman is still in the House. He's our City Administrator. There he is. Bruce, we all appreciate you coming out. And I'm sorry if I missed anybody, but we've been up here running around. So, all right, our next speaker. Our next speaker is our mayor, Mayor David Geisberts. Everyone told me that I would mess his name up, but I learned that he has family roots in Hagerstown. If you don't know this, I was impressed. He has family roots in Hagerstown that they can trace back 250 years. 250 years in this town. He actually he's a local boy. He graduated from North High. He's a 1999 graduate of Salisbury University, and in 1993 he received his master's degree from WVU in counseling. He is a school counselor and mediator. He was endorsed by the Central Maryland AFL-CIO Labor Council prior to his winning the election in 2012. And he ran on a platform of supporting the working man and woman. He's a union man himself, working for Montgomery County School System. We continue to count on his support to recognize the work done by Hagerstown's professional firefighters and find solutions that are best for our department and for our community. You know, they say that community is defined by your police officers, your firefighters, and your teachers. And I think that's very evident in the room tonight. So, come on up, Mayor.
Good evening, everybody. On behalf of the City Council, I want to thank you for inviting me to be here and to speak to you tonight. It is an honor and a privilege to serve as the mayor of Hagerstown. And Victor's right, I do have family roots that go a long way back in Hagerstown's history in the local area. But I also am very proud to have many family members who are firefighters, especially volunteer firefighters. But I know a lot of you who are professional firefighters volunteer on your time off. So, thinking about the remarks that I might make this evening, I started thinking about my stepfather, who recently passed away back in January. He, someone earlier spoke of the humility of firefighters. I remember going on calls in his really cool brown Trans Am back in the 80s, and it would be late at night, and he'd get a call, and I would go with him to these fires. And, I realize now as an adult how much of a special person, what kind of character it takes to do what is against instinct, which is to run into danger and to put oneself at risk. But he was a member of the Maryland Firefighters Hall of Fame, and I did not know that until his funeral. So I want you to know that I will always have your back as firefighters, as union members, as city employees, and we'll work to the best of my ability to make sure that all of our city employees get what they deserve when it comes to compensation and benefits within reason. So, but not that notwithstanding, I do want to say another few words. Someone mentioned the great architecture here in Hagerstown and how we have this legacy of history here in the form of our architecture. Well, if you stop and think about it, that's because we've had such dedicated firemen and women throughout the years protecting life and property all over the city of Hagerstown. So I can imagine a number of these buildings would not be standing here today if it weren't for the quick action of many firefighters over many, many generations. In fact, recently when the building started burned on Antietam Street, many, many people came to me and said, couldn't you have just told the fire department to slow down a little bit that night? I think the work that you do is unparalleled. In fact, I was helping my mom go through some stuff after my stepfather passed away. He was very involved in the Braddock Heights and Middletown volunteer fire companies. And he was the chief, I think, of Braddock Heights back in the 80s. But I found some old recruiting materials that I guess they put out back before smartphones. A couple of bookmarks here with a pen inside. But what struck me were the words on the bookmark. And it says, service above self. And this was about the call to duty. And it speaks to the proud tradition of folks who always put their lives on the line. And I want to recognize the fact that so many of you do that on a day-to-day basis. And it's a proud tradition, and I'm going to read here from the bookmark. From the time of Benjamin Franklin to today, a proud group throughout the land, known as firefighters, risked their lives in service to the community. Protecting human lives and property places these firefighters in an everlasting, day-to-day position of service above self. Firefighting is a proud tradition carried on by proud heroes. So again, I want to thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. It really is an honor. When I think about all the work that is done in the communities, I see it on a daily basis now with the Antietam Fire Company right across the street from my house. I couldn't be happier to have them in the neighborhood, for the presence that they keep in the neighborhood and in every neighborhood where they exist. More eyes on the street, keeping a watch over our city. But when you think about the Bonanza Extravaganza and the work that's done and the money that's raised and the impact that has on so many communities, not just here in Hagerstown, but in Washington County and surrounding area, it really does say a lot about especially this group of firefighters. And I couldn't be prouder of you, and I thank you for your service. Keep up the great work. Thank you again for having me speak to you tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. See, I avoided the name the last time. Thank you, Mayor. Okay. All right, up next, Chief Bobby Halton. He's the editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering Magazine and education director of FDIC, which is the Fire Department Instructors Conference. It's held annually, and it is attended by thousands, tens of thousands of firefighters across this country. And he's been the education director since 2005. Chief Halton is a native New Yorker, grew up in the Bronx, which explains why he felt very much at home when we were driving down Washington Street last night. His family has deep roots in the fire service and the law enforcement communities. He began